Here we have the modes listed from the brightest to the darkest, but before we get into that, let's take another closer look at the Ionian mode, which is also the major scale. I want to teach you about the interval descriptions that we have here. So notice we've got laid out R, which that signifies root, and this little triangle next to 2, that represents major second. So this would be a major third. This P4 is perfect fourth, then you have a perfect fifth, then you have a major 6 and a major 7 back to the root. So one way to describe the major scale or the Ionian mode is that it's a root, major second, major third, perfect fourth, perfect fifth, major 6, major 7, and the root. So now let's look at each individual interval. Okay, so from the root, if we go a whole step away from the root, that would be a major second. Or we could just describe that as simply 2. If we went a half step away from the root, right here in this area, that would be a minor second or a flat 2. Okay, so moving right along, so from the root to the major third, that's 1, 2, 3, 4 half steps. Okay, 4 half steps away is a major third interval. So if we only went 3 half steps away right into this area, this would be a minor third or a flat 3. All right, moving on, so from the root to the perfect fourth, that's 5 half steps away. Okay, and then from the root to the perfect fifth, that's 7 half steps away. Now, if we were to go 6 half steps away, that would be either an augmented fourth, sharp 4, or a flat 5, or a tritone or diminished fifth. Okay, next we have a major 6 interval, and a major 6 is 9 half steps away. So if we were to go right here to 8 half steps away, that would be a minor 6 or an augmented fifth, all right, or a sharp 5. Now, a while ago, whenever I said a minor 6, right in this area, that could also be thought of as a flat 6. Okay, so then we have from the root to the major 7th, that's 11 half steps away. Now, if we were 10 half steps away right in this area, we would have a minor 7th, okay, or a flat 7, if you will. And then 12 half steps away, that is the perfect octave. From this root all the way to this root, that's 12 half steps. And that's the perfect octave. Now that you understand the intervals, okay, and how we determine those intervals, let's get back to the modes from brightest to darkest. So the Ionian mode, we could simply describe it as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And that is the equivalent of saying root, major second, major third, perfect fourth, perfect fifth, major 6, major 7th, and then the octaves. So it's just easier to think about just simply 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Now the mode that's brighter than the major scale or the Ionian mode is the Lydian mode. Okay, the Lydian mode has a augmented fourth or a sharp 4. So look at the difference between the two sets of intervals here. And you notice the only difference, again, is that augmented 4 or the sharp 4. And that's what makes it brighter than the Ionian mode. And one thing I forgot to point out is that all these modes that we're going to look at, we've got them all starting on the same note. In this case, C. That would be a C note right there, as you can see down below right here. So all the modes we have laid out, but starting on the same root note, C. And that way we can easily compare each mode one to another. It makes it easier to compare, and it also helps you to memorize the intervals. Okay, so our brightest mode is the Lydian mode. Okay, then we have Ionian. Now, the mode that's darker than Ionian is the Mixolydian mode. Okay, and the Mixolydian mode is just like the Ionian mode, but it has a flat 7. So all the intervals are the same, except it has a minor 7 or a flat 7. One way that I like to think about it is the Mixolydian is a mix. It's a mix of the major scale, okay, with a minor scale, kind of. It's got a major third and it's got a minor 7. So it has its feet in two different worlds. You got the major world and the minor world. Okay, so it's a mix. So remember that Mixolydian is just like the Ionian mode, but with a minor 7 or a flat 7. Now moving along, what's darker than the Mixolydian mode is the Dorian mode. And the Dorian mode is a type of minor mode. And what makes it minor is the third. Notice the third is a flat 3 or a minor third. Okay, that's what makes a mode major or minor, is its third. And you might say, well, what about its seventh? Well, in the case of melodic minor, and we're not talking about melodic minor in this course, but melodic minor is like the Ionian mode, but it has a minor third, but it has a major 7, but we call it melodic minor, okay, because of its flat 3. But at any rate, we're talking about the Dorian mode here. So the Dorian mode has a flat 3 and a flat 7. So the Dorian mode is just like the Mixolydian mode, except one note difference, and that is the minor third. Now all the minor modes within the major scale, they all have a flat 3 and a flat 7. That's what they all share in common. So let's look at the next mode, Aeolian. Aeolian is darker than Dorian. And what makes it darker is it's just like Dorian with its flat 3 and flat 7, but it also has a flat 6. And that's what makes it darker, the flat 6 or the minor 6. Then next we have the Phrygian. The Phrygian is darker than the Aeolian, and what makes it darker is the flat 2. So it's just like Aeolian, okay, with the flat 3, flat 6, and flat 7, but it also has a flat 2. And then next we have the Locrian. That's the last mode. And the Locrian mode I like to think of as a half diminished mode. So it has a flat 3 and a flat 7, okay, like all the minor modes, but the thing about the Locrian mode is it has a diminished fifth, and that's what makes it separate in my mind, because all the other minor modes have a perfect fifth. Okay, if you look at the Phrygian, the Aeolian, the Dorian, they all have perfect fifths, but the Locrian is the only one with a diminished fifth. Okay, and another thing, again, Locrian is just like the Phrygian mode. Okay, it has a flat 2, it has a flat 3, it has the flat 6 and a flat 7, but it has a diminished fifth. Okay, so we can categorize the modes, and I don't know if you noticed this as we were moving along, but we can categorize the modes into these categories. You've got major modes like the Lydian and the Ionian. Then you have one dominant mode, and that's Mixolydian. And what makes Mixolydian the dominant mode is that it has a flat 7. Some people refer to the Mixolydian as a major mode. I don't, because check it out. The Lydian and the Ionian, they both have major 7ths. Okay, but the Mixolydian mode has a minor 7 or a flat 7. So I give it its own category, and I call it the dominant mode. All right, and then the minor modes, again, they're Dorian, Aeolian, and Phrygian. And they all have in common a flat 3 and a flat 7. Okay? And then lastly, we have the half diminished mode, which is the Locrian. And it's just like Phrygian, except it's got a diminished 5th or flat 5. So you want to memorize the intervals, and I just realized something that we're missing a, there we go. That needs to say root. I'm going to have to fix that later on. But you want to memorize all the intervals of the modes. And a good way to do that, again, is to think about the modes from brightest to darkest, because in doing so, you notice that as we move along, there's one change made to every mode, or to each mode as you go in this sequence. So you have Lydian with its sharp 4. Okay, and then Ionian is all natural. So Ionian is just like the Lydian mode, okay, but it has a natural 4. Okay, and if we keep moving along here, we see that Mixolydian is just like the Ionian mode, but it has a flat 7. And so on. If you compare, you just see one additional change as you move along this sequence. So do yourself a favor and memorize the interval sequences of the modes from brightest to darkest.